It was supposed to be an ordinary camping trip, a simple weekend getaway. Just me and a few friends, Jack, Sarah, and Nick. We'd done it before, many times. A few beers by the fire, some light-hearted stories, and a night under the stars. No big deal. But that weekend, it was different. I can still feel the cold sweat creeping down my spine when I think about it. We'd chosen a remote campsite in the Appalachian Mountains, far away from the usual hustle and bustle. It was the kind of place where you could almost hear your heartbeat in the silence. There was no cell service, no distractions. Just the wilderness and us. As soon as we set up the tents and the fire, the atmosphere shifted. It was like the woods were alive, watching us. You know that feeling when you're being observed, but you can't quite see who or what's doing the watching. That's what it was like. But I brushed it off. Nature, right? Always playing tricks on your mind. It was around midnight when the first thing happened. We were sitting around the campfire, passing a bottle of whiskey, when Jack suddenly went quiet. He'd been telling a story, but now he just sat there, staring into the darkness beyond the firelight. "Jack." I called out, but he didn't respond. I thought he was just drunk, maybe a little too deep in the moment. Nick stood up, walked over to him, and waved his hand in front of Jack's face. "Hey, man, you good?" But Jack didn't flinch. His eyes were wide, and his pupils were unnaturally dilated. "Jack!" Sarah shouted. Still nothing. That's when I started to feel it, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Something wasn't right. I glanced at Sarah and Nick. They were visibly uncomfortable, but no one said anything. We all stood there, in the shadow of the trees, trying to make sense of the situation. Suddenly, Jack snapped out of it. He shook his head, like he was trying to wake up from a bad dream. His eyes refocused, and he turned to us. "What the hell just happened?" he muttered, looking genuinely confused. We didn't know what to say. "You just spaced out for a minute," I said, though it felt more like an eternity. Jack looked around, his gaze darting nervously between the trees. "I heard something," he whispered. "Something in the woods, something's out there." At first, we all laughed it off. Classic Jack, messing with us. But I noticed something in his voice, the fear, the genuine panic. I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Then came the noise. It started softly, like a distant rustling. But it wasn't wind, it was too rhythmic. Like something, or someone, was moving in the forest, pacing around us. Jack wasn't laughing anymore. He was staring into the trees, his face pale. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. We all did. The sound was getting closer. But it wasn't an animal. It was deliberate, like someone, or something, was circling us. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt like the ground beneath me wasn't as solid as it had been before. I stood up, my heart racing. "Okay, we need to check this out," I said, trying to sound calm, though my voice betrayed me. Nick grabbed a flashlight and we slowly moved toward the edge of the campsite. That's when it happened. A figure emerged from the darkness, standing at the edge of the firelight. It was tall, too tall. I could barely make out the shape, but there was something about it, something that wasn't right. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It was just standing there. Jack froze. His breath caught in his throat. "Who's there?" I called out, but my voice felt weak, small in the vast emptiness of the woods. Nothing. No reply. Just the oppressive silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. But the figure didn't budge. It was like it was waiting for us to make the next move. And then, without any warning, it stepped backward into the darkness. We all just stood there, staring at the spot where it had been. None of us spoke. There was no need. The look on each of our faces said it all. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. And it was watching us. We didn't sleep that night. We sat by the fire, our eyes flicking constantly to the tree line, waiting for it to happen again. But it didn't. The woods stayed silent. That is, until the next night. The second night came too quickly. We all tried to act normal, like the strange figure we'd seen the night before was just a trick of the light, a hallucination caused by too many beers and too little sleep. But I could feel it. That same unease, creeping up my spine, making my skin prickle. It was still there, in the back of my mind. That thing in the woods. We decided to keep things low-key this time, no more wandering around, no more let's check out what's in the woods bravado. We set up the fire again, tried to keep it going, and sat in silence. We were all too shaken to talk. It wasn't until around midnight that things took a turn for the worse. The woods had settled into a deep silence, that kind of eerie quiet where even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. The air felt heavier, like it was pressing down on us. Jack was the first to speak, breaking the tension. "Do you think it'll come back?" he asked, his voice low. "No," I said quickly, trying to convince myself more than him. "It was probably just an animal. Some freaky deer or something." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just an animal. It didn't feel like that. Sarah stood up abruptly, her hand clutching her jacket as if she were cold, though the air was warm. "I'm going for a walk. I can't sit here any longer." "Are you nuts?" Nick snapped, his voice shaky. "It's way too late for that." "I'll be fine," Sarah said, though she didn't sound so sure. "I'll just go down to the stream. I need some fresh air." She made her way toward the path that led out of the campsite, disappearing into the darkness. We all watched her go, too tired and too afraid to stop her. I wish I had stopped her. It wasn't long before the first scream came. A sharp, blood-curdling cry that pierced through the quiet night like a knife. My heart nearly stopped in my chest. "Sarah!" I shouted, standing up, my legs weak as I grabbed the flashlight. I turned to Jack and Nick, but they were already moving. We rushed toward the sound, the beam of our flashlights cutting through the dense trees, but it felt like the shadows were closing in around us, swallowing the light. The scream came again, but this time it was cut off abruptly, as though something, or someone, had clamped a hand over her mouth. We followed the sound, the fear building with each step. Finally, we reached the edge of the stream. The flashlight beam caught something. Sarah's jacket. It was hanging from a tree branch. But she was nowhere in sight. "Sarah!" Jack shouted, his voice trembling. "Sarah, where are you?" We searched frantically, but there was no sign of her. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. But then we found it. Just a few feet from where Sarah's jacket hung, there was a patch of ground, the dirt disturbed, as if something had been dragged across it. And then there were the marks, deep, jagged lines in the earth, as if something large and heavy had been pulled through the dirt. Something, or someone, had taken her. I wish that was the worst part. But it wasn't. We stood there, staring at the marks, frozen, when we heard something, quiet at first, a faint scraping noise, like something dragging across stone. But it wasn't coming from the woods. It was coming from behind us. We spun around, our flashlights flickering in the darkness, but there was nothing. Just trees, shadows, and the echoing silence of the woods. Except, something else. A low, guttural growl. It came from the direction of the campsite. For a long moment, none of us moved. We couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The growl sounded so unnatural, so inhuman. It was the sound of something that wasn't meant to exist. And then, from the darkness beyond the firelight, it emerged. The thing from the night before. But this time, it was closer. Much closer. It stepped into the light, tall and thin, its shape barely discernible in the dark, its eyes glowing an unnatural yellow. I didn't know what it was. I didn't want to know. But it was standing there, watching us. And it wasn't alone. Another figure appeared from the trees, then another, and another. They circled us. I don't know how long we stood there, our backs pressed to the tree trunks, hearts racing, minds scrambling for some explanation that could make sense of what was happening. But the truth was, there was no explanation. We weren't alone in the woods. And whatever was out there wasn't letting us go. The figures, those pale, unnaturally tall shadows, didn't move in the way anything should. They shuffled, like they were learning how to walk all over again. Their heads tilted at odd angles, as if they were studying us, and those yellow eyes, they glowed, almost gleamed with a cold, malicious curiosity. I could feel my pulse in my throat. There were no words, no cries, no shouts, only the sharp, sickening sensation of being trapped, of knowing that we were being hunted. I didn't even look at Jack or Nick, my mind was already on survival mode. "Run," I whispered, the command barely audible. But they didn't need to hear it. It was as if we all understood at that exact moment that if we didn't get out of there, we weren't going to make it. I turned and sprinted, not bothering to check if they were behind me. The only thing I could think about was getting away. The ground was uneven, the flashlight in my hand flickering as I tried to keep my balance, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own feet on the forest floor and the sound of someone, running after me. I could hear Jack and Nick behind me, their breaths ragged, but there was something else, too. The sound of something far too fast, far too heavy, breaking through the underbrush. I dared a glance over my shoulder, and what I saw nearly made me fall. One of the figures was right there, just behind us, moving faster than anything that should be able to move in those woods. It was gaining on us. Its arms were long, too long, and its face, it wasn't human. Not even close. It was like the moonlight reflected off something, unnatural. Something that shouldn't be alive. Faster. I screamed, even though I could barely catch my breath. I pushed myself harder, not caring about the pain in my legs, not caring about the branches scraping my skin, anything to put distance between us and whatever that thing was. I heard Jack shout behind me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. We reached the edge of the forest, and I saw the campsite in the distance, the fire still flickering, the tent still standing. But there was something wrong. So wrong. The fire was flickering erratically, casting odd shadows that seemed to move by themselves. I realized then that we had been running in the wrong direction. We weren't heading toward safety. We were heading straight into the heart of it. Into the camp. I wanted to turn back, but there was nowhere else to go. The sounds from the woods were getting closer, too close. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream split the night. Jack. I couldn't stop. I couldn't even look back. But I could hear him. I could hear what was happening to him. The sound of a struggle, of something heavy slamming into the ground. And then, nothing. I didn't stop running. The campsite was in view now, but as I neared, I saw something I'll never forget. The tents, the camp chairs, everything was exactly where we'd left it, except for one thing. Sarah. She was standing by the fire. But it wasn't her. I could feel it. The way she was standing there, too still, too blank. Her head was tilted the same way those creatures' heads had been. She was staring at the fire, unmoving. I froze. And that's when I heard it again. That guttural growl. I turned around slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. It was too late. They were there, right in front of me. The figures. More of them now, appearing from every direction. No matter which way I turned, I could see them. They were closing in, their yellow eyes glowing brighter, their twisted faces inching closer. They were surrounding me, step by slow, deliberate step. One of them reached out. It didn't run. It didn't move with any urgency. It just reached. Its long, thin fingers stretched toward me, its skin paper-thin and sickly pale. And for a moment, I thought it would grab me. But it didn't. Instead, it spoke. Not in words, no, the voice was a buzzing, scraping noise, like the wind scraping over dry leaves. It was a sound I can't describe, but somehow I understood it. And it said something I'll never forget. It's too late for you. I tried to back away, but I was paralyzed. Fear had a grip on me, squeezing my chest, my lungs. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, like it was pressing against me, suffocating me. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Jack. He was standing by the trees, his eyes wide open, but there was no life in them. His face was pale, his mouth slack. He wasn't Jack anymore. He was one of them. I screamed. I ran, stumbled, pushed my body to its limits, ignoring everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the terror. I couldn't stop. I had to survive. But there was no way out. The woods had closed in around us. They had planned it. They had us cornered. And there was nothing left to do but run, and hope it would be enough. I don't remember much about what happened next. My mind was a blur, a mix of pure panic and adrenaline. The sound of my own heartbeat was all I could hear, pounding in my ears, drowning out everything else. My legs felt like they were made of stone, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep running, keep pushing myself, because if I stopped, I knew I wouldn't survive. Behind me, I could hear them, those things. The creatures. Their footsteps were unnervingly silent, but the crackling of the leaves and the occasional low growl cut through the stillness like a knife. They were closing in, but somehow, I was still ahead. Just barely. I looked ahead again, trying to make out any sign of salvation. And then, I saw it, the edge of the forest. The faint glow of headlights cutting through the trees. The road. If I could get to the road, I could get help. Maybe there was a truck, a car, anything to get me out of this nightmare. But the creatures weren't far behind. I could feel their presence, a constant pressure against my back. My body burned from the effort, my breath came in short, sharp gasps, but I didn't dare stop. I pushed myself harder. The moment I hit the open clearing, I heard something that made my blood run cold, a scream. Nick. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I heard his scream echo in the distance, but I couldn't save him. I couldn't even help myself. My legs were giving out, but I forced them to move faster. I reached the road, the gravel crunching under my boots as I sprinted forward. My eyes darted around, searching for anything, anyone, but the road was empty. No cars. No signs of life. Just the cold, empty stretch of asphalt disappearing into the darkness. And then I heard it. A voice. It was soft, but it cut through the night with a strange, soothing calm. Help. Help me. I froze. The voice, her voice, was unmistakable. Sarah. I turned around, my heart pounding, my head spinning. I saw her standing just beyond the tree line, her figure illuminated by the faint light of the road. Her eyes were wide, vacant. She was staring at me, but there was nothing human in her gaze. She wasn't Sarah anymore. I could feel it, deep down in my gut. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong. And then, the figures emerged from the trees. More of them. They had Sarah now, dragging her by the arms, her body limp, her face slack with that same empty expression I'd seen on Jack and Nick. I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop. I was paralyzed by fear, my body screaming at me to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. It's too late for you. The words from the creature echoed in my mind. It's too late for any of us. In a moment of pure instinct, I snapped out of my trance. I turned on my heel and sprinted down the road. I had no plan. No idea what I was doing. I just ran, as fast as my legs could carry me, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. The trees were closing in around me again. The sounds were getting louder. They were coming for me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I didn't dare. I kept running, faster and faster, until I was gasping for breath. My chest burned with every step. My vision blurred, and I stumbled, nearly falling. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Then, as if by some miracle, I saw it, a light in the distance. A headlight. A car. I sprinted toward it, my legs moving like lead, every fiber of my being begging for it to be real. It was real. A truck. A big, red truck, its engine idling, its headlights cutting through the night. I didn't care who it was or why they were here. I just ran, straight for the truck, and pounded on the window. The driver, a middle-aged man, stared at me, his face a mask of confusion. But I didn't wait for him to say anything. I opened the door and jumped in. Go. Go. I screamed, my voice hoarse, desperate. Get out of here. The man's eyes widened, and he slammed his foot on the gas, the truck lurching forward as we sped down the road. I looked over my shoulder, expecting to see the creatures following us, their glowing eyes chasing us through the night. But there was nothing. The road behind us was empty. For a moment, I thought I had escaped. I thought I had made it out. But I was wrong. It wasn't over. The man driving kept looking at me, his face confused, like he didn't understand what had just happened. He didn't know what I had seen, what I had been through. Are you okay, kid? He asked, his voice shaking. You look like you've seen a ghost. I couldn't answer. I couldn't say anything. I just stared ahead, my mind racing. There was a part of me that wanted to scream at him to drive faster, to get away, to never stop. But another part of me, a deeper, darker part of me knew something I couldn't explain. We hadn't escaped. And they were still watching. I could feel them. Somewhere in the woods, just beyond the reach of the headlights, their eyes were still glowing. They were still out there. And I don't think they'll ever stop coming for me. The truck sped down the dark, winding road, its headlights cutting through the night like a thin line of hope, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being followed. Every mile, every second, my heart hammered harder, a constant reminder that whatever I had just survived was far from over. The weight of the terror I'd left behind clung to me, suffocating me. The driver, who I later learned was named Dave, kept glancing at me from the corner of his eye, probably trying to figure out why I was in such a state. My hands trembled so violently I couldn't even hold on to the seat, my mind running through the images of what I had seen. Sarah, Jack, Nick, they were all gone now, twisted, lost to whatever those things were. And I could hear their whispers in the back of my mind, those unsettling words repeating over and over again, "It's too late for you." We drove for what felt like hours, but I had no sense of time anymore. My eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, looking for something, anything, but the road behind us remained clear. Empty. It was too quiet. And that silence, it unsettled me. The constant hum of the truck's engine was the only thing that filled the air, but it was as if the world outside had gone still, holding its breath. Dave finally broke the silence. So, where are you headed, kid? I couldn't answer. I had no idea. I was just trying to put as much distance between me and that place as possible. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. I had no home anymore. No safety. No escape. Those things, the creatures, weren't confined to that forest. They could be anywhere. I didn't even know what they were, what they wanted, but I could feel their presence, their cold, suffocating gaze, still pressing down on me, even as we drove farther away from the woods. "Why don't you take a break?" Get some sleep, I'll drive, Dave said, trying to be kind, though his voice wavered with uncertainty. You've been through a lot. Sleep. I hadn't slept in what felt like days, but the thought of closing my eyes. I couldn't. Every time I blinked, I saw them. The creatures. Their eyes, their long, pale forms. I could feel their hunger, their relentless pursuit. And I knew that if I closed my eyes, if I let my guard down for even a second, they would find me again. No, I whispered, barely able to speak. I can't sleep. I can't. Dave didn't press the issue. Instead, he kept driving, his face a mask of worry and concern. He must have thought I was just in shock, still dealing with the trauma of whatever had happened in those woods. But he didn't understand. He couldn't. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the truck reached a small, dimly lit gas station by the side of the road. The flickering neon sign buzzed in the cold night air. It looked abandoned, but it was a place to stop. A place to breathe. I needed that. Dave pulled in, and I didn't hesitate. I jumped out of the truck before he could say anything, running toward the building, desperate for anything that felt remotely safe. Inside, the smell of stale coffee and old paper hit me like a wall. There was a lone clerk behind the counter, an older man, his face lined with years of exhaustion. He barely glanced up when we walked in, lost in the haze of his own thoughts. The radio was playing softly in the background, an old country tune, but even that couldn't cover the feeling of dread that clung to the air. I went straight for the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I stared at myself in the mirror. The reflection was almost unrecognizable, my face pale, eyes wide with terror, hair tangled and matted. I looked like someone who had been running for her life. And maybe I had been. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm myself, but it didn't help. I still felt like I was being watched. I could almost hear them, those whispers, low, rasping voices, like they were coming from just behind the door, from the shadows in the corners of the room. But then I heard something else. A knock at the door. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The sound of the knock was light, almost too casual. I didn't know who it was, but I knew one thing, it wasn't Dave. I pressed my back to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Hey, are you okay in there? Dave's voice called through the door. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The air felt thick again, pressing down on me, and I could hear them, faint footsteps, soft but deliberate, moving outside the door. The door handle rattled. Open up, Dave said, but his voice sounded strange now. The tone was wrong, too cold, too controlled. I held my breath, my hand hovering over the lock. Then, it happened. The handle twisted violently, and I heard something that made my blood run cold, the sound of something scraping against the wall outside the bathroom. I didn't think. I just reacted. I shoved the bathroom window open and climbed through it, ignoring the sharp pain in my legs as I dropped to the ground outside. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I just ran. I heard the door slam open behind me, but I didn't slow down. I sprinted into the darkness, the cold air biting my skin as I ran down the road, desperate for distance. I couldn't go back to the truck. I couldn't go back to anything. I kept running, but as I turned a corner, I saw it again. The truck. Dave was standing next to it, but it wasn't Dave anymore. His face was wrong. Twisted. His eyes, wide and vacant, stared out at me, but there was no recognition there. And standing beside him was something else. One of the creatures. Its pale face grinning at me, its eyes glowing yellow, its mouth opening to let out a low, hissing laugh. It wasn't over. It would never be over. And that's when I realized, whatever those things were, wherever they came from, they weren't just in the woods. They were everywhere. Waiting. Watching. And I would never escape them. I could feel my legs shaking beneath me, my breath coming in short gasps as I stumbled back, trying to keep distance between me and the truck. Dave, no, it wasn't Dave anymore, just stood there, unmoving, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The creature beside him was so much worse than before. It was more alive, more aware. I could see the hunger in its eyes, the malice that radiated from it. The creature tilted its head at me, the movement so unnatural that it sent a cold wave of terror through my body. Its mouth opened wider, exposing too many teeth, sharp and jagged, like something from a nightmare. But worse than its appearance, worse than the unnatural way it moved, was the feeling it gave me, a deep, aching certainty that it wasn't just hunting me. It was waiting for me to make a mistake. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I had to run. I turned on my heels and bolted, my legs screaming with the effort, my lungs burning from the cold air as I fled into the night. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I was hoping for, there was no safety, no refuge anymore. The creature in the distance was still watching me, still waiting. But I couldn't stop. I had learned something tonight. There was no escaping. They could be anywhere. And they weren't just hunting me, they were playing with me. I wasn't a target. I was a game. The headlights of the truck blinked in my peripheral vision as I sprinted down the darkened road, but I refused to look back. I couldn't. I didn't want to know how close they were. I kept running, my breath ragged, the darkness consuming everything around me. Every step felt like it might be my last, like the ground beneath my feet was going to disappear. I rounded a corner, not even sure where I was anymore, when I heard a sound that made me freeze in my tracks, a low, sickening hiss, so close that it sent a jolt of terror through my body. I spun around, flashlight still clutched in my trembling hand, but I couldn't see anything. The night was suffocatingly still, the kind of stillness that made everything feel wrong. The wind had stopped, the crickets were silent. The world had gone dead. And then, I saw it. A shadow, too long and too thin, shifted from behind the trees. It moved silently, effortlessly, gliding toward me. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, those same yellow eyes that had haunted me ever since I first saw them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I couldn't. My legs were like lead, my heart was pounding so hard I couldn't even hear myself think. The creature took another step forward, its mouth slowly parting, revealing more teeth. My head spun, the edges of my vision blurring as the air grew colder. And then, just as it stepped into the light, something inside me snapped. I turned and ran, not thinking, not looking, just running faster than I ever had in my life. The thudding of my feet on the gravel road was the only thing I could hear now, the only thing that kept me going. I pushed myself until my legs were on fire, until the air felt like it was being sucked out of my lungs, but I couldn't stop. Somehow, some way, I managed to find a highway, a real one, with bright lights and cars. I didn't know where it led, I didn't care. I just needed help. I needed to be seen. If someone could just see me, maybe I could escape. But the closer I got to the highway, the more it felt like the ground was pulling me back. I felt their presence again, closing in around me, pressing against me. It wasn't the trees this time. It wasn't the forest. They were everywhere. I reached the highway, and I saw headlights in the distance. A car, someone. I could barely make out the shape of the vehicle, but it was enough. I could make it. I stumbled into the middle of the road, waving my arms wildly, my voice a hoarse scream as I ran toward the car, toward the only hope I had left. But the car didn't stop. It swerved around me, its tires screeching as it roared past. The driver didn't even glance at me. I turned to watch it disappear into the night, but when I did, I saw something that made my heart freeze. Standing just at the edge of the road, watching me, was another figure. One of them. But it wasn't alone. There were more. They were everywhere, behind trees, along the sides of the road, in the shadows. More than I had ever seen before. The creatures. I felt a cold, twisting sensation in my gut. They weren't hiding anymore. They weren't waiting. They were surrounding me. And for the first time since I'd run from the forest, I knew, there was nowhere left to go. My breath caught in my throat. My heart raced, but my legs could barely move. I was trapped. They were closing in, their eyes glowing, their mouths parting in silent anticipation. And then, just as I thought they would finally reach me, someone, moved in between us. A figure, tall and dark, stepped into the middle of the road, blocking their path. It was no human. The figure had no face, just a silhouette, impossibly tall and wide, its presence overwhelming. The creatures hesitated, their movements faltering. They didn't advance, not yet. They stood still, watching the figure, waiting. The figure raised its arm, pointing directly at me. And in that moment, I realized with a jolt of pure terror that I wasn't the one they were after anymore. They were after the person who had brought me here. The figure in the road stood motionless, its presence so overwhelming that I could hardly breathe. The creatures, those horrifying, otherworldly things that had hunted me since the moment I entered those woods, seemed to shrink away from the figure. They didn't retreat, but they paused. Their glowing eyes flickered uncertainly, like they were waiting for something, waiting for the command to advance, to attack, to finish what they had started. But the figure did nothing. It stood there, still and unyielding, its arm outstretched toward me, pointing. I didn't know who, or what, it was. I didn't even know if it was an ally, but in that moment, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of relief. The pressure, the suffocating terror that had been crushing me, eased just a little. I looked around, still trying to understand what was happening. The creatures didn't seem interested in me anymore. They were watching the figure, studying it, their heads tilting in unison. They were waiting. And I realized the truth. I was never meant to escape. This wasn't a random encounter. I wasn't just unlucky enough to stumble into the woods that night. I had been chosen. I had been led here. The figure that had appeared out of nowhere, blocking the path between me and the creatures, wasn't there to help me. It wasn't there to protect me. It was there to complete the cycle. It had been guiding me all along. The memory of the first time I heard those whispers flooded back to me. It's too late for you. That wasn't a warning. It was a statement. A truth that I hadn't wanted to accept. I had become part of something bigger. A ritual. A game. The creatures, those things, they didn't just appear by chance. They had been waiting for me, watching me. They had been following me from the moment I set foot in that forest, and every step I took, every scream that echoed in the night, had been part of their plan. And the figure, it wasn't one of them. It was a gatekeeper. A keeper of the cycle. It wasn't here to stop the creatures, it was here to make sure the process was completed. And now, it was my turn. A sharp pang of realization struck me. The truck. Dave. The gas station. All of it, it wasn't just coincidence. They had been part of it too. The people I met, the places I went, it was all designed to guide me here, to this road, to this moment. The figure raised its other hand, and I saw something gleam in its grasp. A knife. The blade glinted in the moonlight as it held it in front of me. It wasn't meant for me. No, it was meant for the creatures. The figure lowered its arm, and the creatures began to move again. But this time, they didn't come for me. They came for the figure. They charged toward it, their movements erratic, their mouths open in hunger, but the figure was ready. With a single swift motion, the knife sliced through the air. It cut through the first creature, its body collapsing into dust before it even hit the ground. Another creature lunged, but the figure struck again, and the second one crumbled to nothing. The creatures kept coming, one after another, until there was nothing left of them but ashes in the wind. And then, finally, silence. The figure stood motionless, watching the ashes settle around it, as the last of the creatures disappeared into nothingness. I couldn't move. I couldn't process what had just happened. It was over. But what had just ended? The figure turned toward me, its form towering and faceless, and for a brief moment, I thought it might speak, might reveal the truth of everything. But it didn't. It raised its hand one last time, and with a single, quick motion, it pointed toward the woods. Without a word, it turned away and disappeared into the darkness, vanishing as if it had never been there. I stood alone on the road, my body trembling from exhaustion, from fear, from the weight of everything that had just happened. The road was empty now. No truck, no creatures, no figure. Just me. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I had survived, yes, but at what cost? The truth had been revealed to me. I was never meant to escape. And now that I had seen the truth, I knew one thing for certain, there was no escaping them. The creatures weren't gone. They would never truly be gone. They had been there for as long as the earth had existed, lurking in the shadows, waiting. And they would be waiting for me. Waiting until I had to go back. The road ahead stretched into the darkness, endless and uncertain. But I didn't have the strength to go forward. The weight of the truth was too much. And as I turned back toward the woods, I knew, no matter how far I ran, no matter how many times I thought I had escaped, the cycle would never end. I would always be their prey.